Hello, welcome again to the Tarbutton Hall. I'm Jack Hardy. I'm an associate professor of linguistics here at Oxford College. Welcome to the Ideas Festival of Emory. I'm going to share some announcements before our next talk. So, we will be having time for questions towards the end. Please make your question concise, avoid long introductory remarks, and let others ask questions before asking a follow-up question yourself. That sounds very serious to precede a comedic session. So feel free to also take pictures. It's being recorded though if you want to catch it later. Please follow us on Instagram at Ideas Festival Emory. Reminder to turn off your ringtones. And I'm going to give the formal introduction. So today's session, right now we're going to hear from Lew Lefton, who's a mathematician by training and a STEAM educator at heart. His day job is an assistant dean and associate vice president of research at Georgia Tech, focusing on IT and research computing. He's the founding director of Decatur Makers, a welcoming community makerspace in the Atlanta metro area. Make sure you check out their tent on the quad today. He's also a board member of the Southeast Makers Alliance, which produces Maker Faire Atlanta. So, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Lew Lefton, and let's give him a big, warm Oxford welcome.
Thank you, Jack. Give a hand for Jack. Yay, Jack. All right. Well, so I'm a mathematician. I actually faculty at Georgia Tech. But they let me come on campus here, you know. It's not like UGA where you need special paperwork. And my daughter actually went to Oxford at Emory and then finished up at the main campus in Atlanta. So this is not unfamiliar territory for me. I love Oxford, honestly. It's, even when I was a kid, I enjoyed my Oxford loafers. They were great. The Oxford English Dictionary, great read. If you haven't read it, it's got all the words. That's it, but it's worth it still reading it. And of course, your comma, a big favorite of mine. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. You guys are here for math comedy, which is not typical comedy and not typical mathematics. So we're in that space, which is pretty much, I'm the only person in that part of the Venn diagram between math and comedy, I think, right now. But so I'm a faculty member at Georgia Tech. Any teachers, faculty? You're faculty, right, Jack? Where do you teach? Emory main campus. All right. Any University System of Georgia folks? You know, Emory's a private school. Georgia Tech's public. Where are you at?
University of Georgia.
UGA. All right. Excellent. So you know, right? Then that. At University System of Georgia, we have to use a standard grading policy, right? This is a thing the chancellor put in place. Everybody has to use the same. 90 to 100 is an A. $80 to $90,000 will buy a B. Straight on down the line. Makes for transfer credit easier. You don't have to make change and stuff. So, so as a mathematician, I went to graduate school. I was a grad student. I had an advantage among some of my other grad students. I spoke English, which is helpful. Don't take that in the wrong way. Math is actually a very international subject. I mean, math is one of these things that transcends all different countries, all different languages and cultures. And I actually took statistics. My first statistics class was from a woman from India, and she couldn't say the word square. So she'd say x squared plus y squared, and it follows a chi squared with a t squared. After a lecture from her, I had a whole notebook full of frightened variables. It's pretty bad. But I learned a lot of things in graduate school teaching basic algebra, basic probability. Here's something interesting I'll share with you as a math tidbit. If you have a bag and it's got 7 red balls and 5 blue balls in it, and you select 4 balls out of it at random, there is a 94% chance you are trapped in a word problem. Because nobody ever really does that in the real world. But yet, word problems, they're great. The favorite part of most math classes for most students is the word problems, right? Wrong. I remember giving a review session after one of my lectures, and that was it. The students would come in, they were preparing for the test, and all they wanted to do was hear about the word problems. Like, how do you do this word problem? How do you set it up? And after a while, like, you're reading all these word problems, and finally, I just, after the session, I just went to a bar and just had a beer, sat down to kind of decompress a little bit, and sat down, struck up a conversation with the woman next to me. It's like, hi, I'm Lou. She goes, oh, hi, my name is Danielle. It's like, Danielle, you're the one that can row upstream at 8 miles an hour, right? Yeah, and your boyfriend Tom rows downstream at 4 miles an hour. What time did you guys meet? Anyway, you meet the people that they wrote the story problem about. There's so much more to the story they don't tell you in the problem. Yeah. I did, even when I was in grad school, I tried to work on doing comedy. I was doing comedy in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, where I did my degree. And you try to inject a little humor into your classes, right? Humor is a powerful way of opening up people's minds and getting them to, reduce their resistance to new ideas. And but it doesn't work on tests. That's the thing I found out. It's like, I used to think at first when I was a grad student, it's like, oh, I'll put a joke problem on one of the tests. That'll be great. The students will love it. And then you see that they're working, they're sweating. You're about 5 minutes into the test, you've passed it out, the room is silent. Everybody's focused. And then that's when I stand up and I go, time's up! What? It's only been, oh, sorry, my watch battery died. Here, you spit this retainer out, ma'am, you can spit that back in. No, it wasn't funny to them. Or putting an impossible problem, because in math we have a lot of unsolved major problems that are well known. Putting those on the test, again, not appreciated by the students. It was a joke. It's a joke. But I do remember teaching calculus. Any students here had calculus? Yeah? So you've had some calculus? Good. I'm just going to I'm trying to gauge to see how abstract can my math jokes get for this particular audience. We'll keep testing you, and at some point there will be a math joke I make that nobody gets, and then I know I've gone too far. So, but I remember in my calculus class, you teach and you show them problems. We were doing basic limits. The limit as x approaches 8 from the right of 1 over x minus 8. You guys know the answer? What is it? Infinity is correct. Very good. Yeah, because you're approaching 1 over x minus 8. So I figured, we went over this, we described it, we graphed it, I showed the students what it was. So on the exam, I thought I'd give them an easy, this is basically the same problem. And unfortunately, some of the students didn't really understand it. This is not an unusual answer. It's like, oh, I don't think you get it. So when the students fill a test, you who are faculty, you always get questions, can we get a makeup? Can I drop a test, right? I want a makeup quiz or something like that. So I actually, one time I decided to go ahead and do a makeup quiz for a math test that I thought all the students should have gotten, but some of the students wanted a makeup quiz. I said, oh, okay, I'll do a makeup quiz. So you're invited to a formal dinner at the White House. What sort of makeup should you wear? Let's find out, right? Multiple choice, because it's got to be easy for me to grade. Should you wear some light rouge, dark mascara, red lipstick? Maybe you should go for the lime green eyeshadow and the silver glitter. Or just enough foundation to cover your face tattoos. Which one is it? No. I do think that technology has changed how teaching is handled nowadays, right? I'm sure it's true in all the disciplines. It's definitely true in math. I mean, ChatGPT can basically get through most advanced calculus courses at this point, and it's a challenge to be a teacher. And I've tried to use some technology in my class. I've decided to go a little old school on the technology. I had each of the desks wired with an electrical charge and a large scissor switch that I could throw to shock all of them. Go a little behavior modification. That didn't work, but I do like technology, and even when I was a kid, Jack mentioned that I'm one of the founders of a local community makerspace in Atlanta, and I was always a maker as a kid. I remember taking my calculator and taking it apart and looking at the keyboard and deciding that, this factorial button doesn't do what I think it should do. So I rewired the factorial button on my little TI calculator, and put a little audio chip in there and made it so that when you pressed 17 factorial, the calculator said 17! Thank you. For those of you that know factorial notation, it's an exclamation point. But you know, there's some students obviously in the audience, some younger folks. I want to encourage you to tinker, to take things apart, to void the warranty and try to explore. I kind of thought of myself as an inventor when I was a kid, and honestly, when I talked to other folks, they said, yeah, that's good. When you're young, you should try to work on the hardest unsolved problem in whatever field you're on, because you're coming in fresh without all of the structured thinking that's been imposed on you by systemic educational systems, and just, you know, you're going to have fresh ideas. I remember as an inventor, I wanted to solve the hard. There's 2 or 3 major unsolved problems in inventing, right? In entrepreneurship, no one's quite conquered the perpetual motion machine. Yeah, I designed one, and actually it will work. I actually have a working perpetual motion machine design. It takes forever to wind it up, but once it gets going, and a time machine. Right? And here's the thing, I actually built a time machine. I have a time machine in my basement, and it works. I mean, it goes in one direction at a constant speed, but I am able to get inside and set the dials for, say, 5 minutes in the future, and then I push go, and the time machine goes, and then it opens the door, and I get out, and I am in the future at that point. So the different speeds, the different directions, those are all a V2. I'm looking for investors in the time machine. What else? Time is an interesting concept, though. In mathematics, we look at time, you know, some people look at it as a fourth dimension. Some people look at it as a completely independent thing. Time, of course, in cosmology, we know is actually just part of space. But when you think about it and constrained to the planet Earth, time is one of the few things that every single human being on the planet has agreed on. We actually all got together and figured out that, yeah, we're going to slice the planet up into 24 sections, and everybody agrees that, you know, it's going to be this time here, and we're going to have this branch cut in the middle of the ocean, and it's called the date line. When I first heard about the international date line, I thought it was like an 800 number you dial. You get to go out with someone from Norway, but no, it's not. It's a different thing, international date line. But we all agreed, like, if you're on this side of the line, it's today. And if you're on this side of the line, it's tomorrow. That's pretty cool, right? We all agree on that. We don't ever fight over time on that way. That's how they predict the weather, by the way. They start in today. I wonder what it's going to be like tomorrow. I don't know. Let's go check it out. Oh, highs in the 90s, lows in the 60s, chance of afternoon showers. It's going to be a lot like today. Yeah, the time is interesting. We're coming up to daylight savings time. Daylight savings time has become a politics thing now. People are trying to outlaw it or keep it. Are you guys, I don't want to get political, but you guys in favor of daylight savings time? How many people in favor of daylight savings time? How many people would just as soon have it go away? Yeah, see? It divides people. I hate daylight savings time just because I don't like to have to, like, it makes me find where all the clocks are twice a year. I don't know where, because there's, you know, you set your watch, you have your, most of the clocks set themselves automatically on your computer, but then you got to go and turn your sundial 15 degrees. You know, it's a pain in the ass. What else? Any physicists in the crowd? No? You can always spot physicists at a baseball game if you're ever wondering, because everybody's doing the wave, and then the physicist is the one guy trying to decide, flipping a coin each time, whether they should maybe do the particle on the next time around. Because their duality. Here's something interesting about physics, actually. You know, we talk about the wave. Waves are critical. I mean, radio waves, right? How's my microphone working? It's working over radio waves. Radio waves are everywhere. They're all over. They're embedded in all the space that we sit in. That's how your Wi-Fi works. That's how you, back in the old days, that's how you got your music. Nowadays, it's actually still how you get your music, but it's different protocol. The thing is about radio waves is they're outside the visible spectrum. So you can't see them, but I, as a young inventor, discovered a way you can see radio waves. And you can actually do this. We can do this. This is a hands-on demonstration thing. Find a bright source of electromagnetic light, like one of the lights or bright lights, and then you've got to filter the frequencies till they're in the radio wave spectrum. So close your eyes almost completely, then open just a tiny bit, and you'll see there. You see they look kind of like eyelashes. They're little wavy things. Those are radio waves. It works in a bar bet. What else? Weather, climate. That's another scientific area that math. Yeah, math has lots of applications. I find that in weather, they always talk. I would hear the weatherman, weatherwoman, the weather person say, "Yeah, we've got this storm front in the Atlantic, but it's a very disorganized storm." Now, as a 63-year-old retired mathematician, I can really relate to a disorganized storm, because to me, that's a storm that's like, "I will blow you with my..." Where'd my lightning bolt go? Hey, did you see my lightning? I had some thunderclap. That's what I figure. A disorganized storm is just one that's got just a little bit on the border. Yeah. So what are some applications of math? I mean, mathematics, obviously, it's this huge, it's a fantastic subject because it's one of the only sciences, I would argue the only science, where all the things we know are still true. Like, you wouldn't go back to ancient Greek medicine. You wouldn't use chemistry from the Middle Ages. You would not trust physics from the 1800s. But mathematics goes back to Euclid, goes back thousands of years. The Pythagorean theorem is still true. Because mathematics, our results are held up to a standard of logical proof that transcends all the natural phenomena. So we have literally thousands of years of mathematics to work on. And as a result, a lot of it has been developed for applications. One of the applications that I think a lot of people don't remember is just negative numbers. At the time that they were invented, negative numbers were like heresy. What? You can't have something that's less than zero. But no, I use negative numbers all the time. So do you, right? I mean, they're common now. In fact, I carry a minus sign with me, and I'll use it at the store. I'll put it in front of prices. Everything becomes. They pay you to take the merchandise. Oh, I didn't realize this thing costs -5. There you go. Sometimes I use it on the microwave. If my coffee's too hot, I'll put it in for negative 30 seconds. Careful then, because you might freeze and break your coffee cup. That's happened to me. And that's just negative numbers. We've introduced other numbers other than real numbers, fractions. We've introduced complex numbers. You guys know about imaginary complex numbers, right? Complex numbers were introduced because x squared plus 1 equals 0 didn't have a solution in any of the number systems we knew, and yet we needed to solve that equation. So we came up with, we meaning human race. Again, mathematics is universally agreed upon by and large. So I like complex numbers because I use them to balance my checkbook. No, it's really convenient. You've got the real part. That's what the bank thinks you have. And then you've got the imaginary part, completely orthogonally independent, and that's what you can spend. So. All right. Let's see, I can do a few math jokes for you. Yeah, talking about banks, teaching today, I don't want to get into too much in politics, but I do say it's tough to be a teacher. You have to be careful of things you say sometimes. And in banks, we were talking about credit unions, and we were talking about banks one time with some students in a finance class I was working with, and we talked about the credit reporting agencies. You guys know credit reporting, right? Credit reports are a hugely important number for a lot of folks, especially early in their lives, right? You've got TransUnion, you've got Equifax, you've got, Experian. Those are the three. Like, they control the whole thing, those three companies. It's it. They decide how creditworthy you really are. They get to be like the arbiters of trust. But there's a bunch of folks now in the world, at least in the U.S., that are very suspicious of large organizations. They don't trust big companies, big government. I live in Georgia. I've lived here for decades, and if you go into South Georgia, you got folks down there who they may not trust whatever those credit reporting agencies. I think there's a business opportunity to create a fourth credit reporting agency that's going to appeal to the more conservative rural American. I think what we do is we take a tip from TransUnion. We make a credit reporting agency called CisConfederate. It's a little more traditional. It's a long way to go for that joke. Punchline, I appreciate you guys sticking with me on that one. All right. What else? Yeah, so yeah, when I was a kid, I was into math. I really was. I just liked to take stuff apart. I liked to learn. It was puzzles. I remember that I saw math everywhere. I remember walking through the mall. I would go past the Victoria's Secret sign. There was a big poster out in front of the store, all bras, 50% off. I got very excited. I walked in. I was expecting, but it turned out to be a sale on lingerie. I was thinking everyone was going to have one boob hanging out, which would have been much better for 14-year-old Lew. Honestly, 63-year-old Lew wouldn't complain, but yeah. And even in religion, right? You'd think religion, that's the scope of the spirit, of faith. It doesn't really intersect with science and but math, a lot of people don't realize that math actually has something to say about religion. Here's something, Emory has a school of theology. I'm sure they teach you that when you die, at the very end of your life, God gives you all the answers to your odd-numbered problems. Just the odd ones, though. You have to figure the even ones out on your own. That's how we know there's math out there beyond your grave. How are you guys doing? Math jokes okay? Sitting okay with this?
Yeah.
We can shift. I mean, I can get into some partial difference equations theory. But
The odd number jokes are...
perfect. I love that. Thank you very much. Yeah, so my professor, when I was in grad school, told me she can never give a math talk without actually proving a theorem, right? You have to. That's what you do. That's what we do. We prove theorems. So I'm going to prove a theorem because it's another application of math that can show you that math might be able to help you just live a more fulfilling life. So here's my theorem. I'm going to prove to you today that 10 cents is better than eternal happiness. That's pretty good, right? I mean, it's actually not a complicated proof. First, we'll assume 10 cents is better than nothing, right? Everybody can agree to that. Axiomatically, we're okay. Everybody's with me on step 2. Nothing is better than eternal happiness. I mean, honestly. And so by transitivity, we actually have proof, QED. So there you go. I've done some math for you. All right. Well, I'm just wondering, should I get more mathematical to see where the limit is? You guys ready? All right, see where the limit is. That's right. All right, I'll do a quick impression. See if you guys can guess what this is. Hallelujah and amen. I just want you all to know that if you have a polynomial, that's right, a polynomial, ladies and gentlemen. A polynomial. Do I hear an amen for the polynomial? Amen. Yes, hallelujah. If this polynomial has coefficients that are complex numbers, then as sure as Jesus has risen from the dead and as sure as God loves you, it has at least one complex root. Hallelujah. That's the fundamentalist theorem of algebra. Thank you. Thank you. All right, you guys know the fundamental theorem of algebra, that's good. Or what you do now. See, you're learning things. All polynomials with complex coefficients have at least one root. All right, non-zero. I didn't say non-zero, I should have said non-zero. Not gonna get struck down. All right, yeah, so what else? Well, here's one. When I was another algebra joke, when I was in graduate school, I was taking my qualifying exams, and they asked me to prove that every principal ideal domain is a unique factorization domain. I mean, pretty basic stuff, right? A basic undergraduate abstract algebra course. You prove that every PID is a UFD. And I misunderstood them, and I proved that every IUD is a UFO. Which is also a theorem, by the way, but a very different proof. So I didn't pass that exam. It's kind of embarrassing to tell people I didn't pass my algebra qualifiers, and they said, God, algebra, I had that stuff in high school. I thought you were a PhD student. But yeah, it was just algebra mistakes. They were tricking me too. They gave me 2 groups, and they said, are these 2 groups isomorphic? And I said, that one is, but that one isn't. Okay, that gets a laugh at every math conference. I've found the limit of this audience. That's perfect. Good to know. Let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm a father. I have 3 daughters. I mentioned one that went here, one went to Georgia Tech, one went to UGA. So I know all the bursar's offices. And my first daughter was born, and then we had twins. And then my wife, who was also a mathematician, we got together and we decided to stop because we weren't sure if it was an arithmetic or a geometric progression. We knew we were either adding one or doubling each time, but either way, she said no to the third pregnancy. So, and I was worried when I was raising kids because, you know, I was afraid they were going to become a smartass like me. Right? I was kind of a smart-mouthed kid. My dad would say stuff to me like, well, I don't hear with that crap. I'd say, gee, Dad, only this much more, and you'll be full of crap. Get it? You're grounded. Right? That's how your parents would punish you. You're grounded. It's like, okay, I'm grounded. No free electrons on me. That's right. I won't carry an electrical charge for the next month. That's my penalty. Any twins out there? Anybody have twins or is a twin? Usually in a room this size, you can catch at least someone, no? So our twins developed their own language. This is actually not uncommon. When you read the parenting books, sometimes this happens. Twins have a very close bond in early years, and our twins actually developed their own language. And my wife was super concerned about it. She goes, why are they developing their own language? They should use, I mean, they're not going to be able to communicate. Everyone in this preschool is going to ostracize them. And I said, you know, because I have a background in computer science as well as math, and I thought if they want to develop a language, you know, let them write a compiler as a toddler. That's what I said. All right, the physics jokes are maybe not the computer science. All right, we'll work on that. Yeah. One of my friends when I was a kid, you know, I talked about being a smartass. His mom was an ophthalmologist, so she was a doctor that had, you know, she was an eye doctor, and so she would go and we would sometimes go and hang out in her office after school. There would be an empty exam room, and we'd be like looking at all these tools and playing like sword fights with all these different equipment. One time we picked one up and she caught us and she goes, hey, put that down. You can put somebody's eye in with that. Thank you again for a long road to a short pond. What else? Yeah, when I was growing up, I also was, like I said, I was a curious kid. I think curiosity is a good thing. I hope all of you are encouraging it in your nieces, nephews, sons, daughters, and that kid down the street that you don't really know. But curiosity is good. Yeah, I was curious. When I was a kid, I would like to go exploring. I pretended I was an explorer when I wasn't being an inventor. And actually, the best place to go exploring is your mom and dad's bedroom. That's just everybody knows that for kids. It's when I remember I would like go in there and I looked in my mom's nightstand and I found she had one of those electric rolling pins, you know, one of those battery operated, and had the fluted edges for pie crusts and stuff. So I put that back in the kitchen drawer where it belonged. That night at book club was very different. But I got to say, my wife is also a mathematician. She and I met in grad school, and I'm going to try a few more math jokes on you. She is, honestly, she is absolutely beautiful. Which of course means that even if you rearrange her, she's still beautiful. Thank you, Infinite Series fans. All right. We got married, we exchanged rings. I gave her the integers, she gave me continuous functions on 0, 1. A lot of people said it wasn't going to work out because we didn't have the same ideals. All right, I'm not going to do any more algebra jokes. But you know, I did decide to do a little bit more math, right? Math jokes. After I got out of graduate school, I started doing comedy, I started doing improv, I started finding that I had these jokes I would write that were math jokes that I could do occasionally at places like this and others. These don't work when you're at the Punchline or if you're in a regular comedy club. Some of these jokes, don't even try them. But I started writing math jokes, like why did the chicken cross the Mobius strip? To get to the, oh no wait, that one doesn't work. I'm just going to ask, I probably should have asked this earlier, are there any math majors or former or fallen math majors in the audience? Kind of? Next? Excellent, excellent. So are you familiar with Paul Erdős? Do you know that name? Does that name ring a bell? Erdős? Yeah, some of you know that name, right? He's a very famous mathematician. He's written many books. Also was sort of in many ways, he was an unhoused mathematician. He would just go from conference to conference and stay with people and create fantastic solutions to problems and encourage people to solve other puzzles and problems. Erdős is actually so famous that there's a mathematical constant named after him, the Erdős number. Every mathematician has an Erdős number. It's the number of people that you have published with who are, it's how far away you are from having co-authored a paper with Paul Erdős before he died. So if you co-authored a paper with Erdős, what's that?
It's not just mathematicians.
Oh, is it not? Of course not. Everybody, that's true. You have an Erdős number of 2? Oh my gosh. So I dreamed, here's my joke, I dreamed I had published a paper with Paul Erdős. I dreamed I published a paper with Paul Erdős, and then I woke up and I realized my Erdős number was 4 plus I. That's pretty good. That one got a better laugh than the PID joke. I'm impressed. Yeah, mine's only 4, so that means that she's published a paper with somebody who has co-authored a paper with Paul Erdős. Good for you. It's a fun game. It's like 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, but for geeks. Yeah. So what else? I wrote up. In mathematics, one of the things we do a lot is we abstract things, right? We look for patterns. We try to get above the details of a particular problem or a particular theory and try to understand what are the key things inside that really can you pull out that are the core reasons why stuff works or doesn't work. So I started to work on abstract comedy. I wrote an abstract joke. Sorry, so I'm going to try it on you guys. There's these 3 people, all right, in this place, and then the first person says something, all right, and then the second person says something sort of similar, and then the third person says the punchline. All right, maybe we should do an example. That's how we teach math, by the way. It's all wrong, it's all backwards. And then I started doing more comedy after I got out of grad school. I started doing festivals, comedy festivals, competitions, things like that. I remember I went to the 420 festival because I thought it was about numbers. It's not. It was a cool place. Of course, 420, it's like the marijuana culture, right? It was the 420 festival and everything there. The booths that they had set up there was one booth, everything in the booth was made out of marijuana or marijuana plants. It was like they had candles. So even the price tags were made out of hemp. They had hemp clothing. It was like everything, the whole thing. I took a picture of it and I posted it online and it's like hashtag. Yeah. I did comedy at a Mensa meeting one time. All my jokes went under their heads. So that was reassuring that I still was in touch with the average person. I mentioned I had 3 daughters. I'm going to finish up here with a few impressions. I want to do a few impressions and maybe leave a few question and answer opportunities if you have questions after a half hour of math jokes. I do have 3 daughters. I grew up with 3 sisters, my wife and 3 daughters I lived with. I've lived with women all my life. And so I'd like to show you how empathetic I am as an older white man, that I still understand the female condition. I'm going to do my impression of a minstrel cramp. My impression of a minstrel cramp. Here we go. Ready? I come to your town, I sing it, oh shit! Ow! My leg. Thank you. A minstrel cramp. So stupid, you people. All right. I will do a song, though. I will sing a quick little song, not a long song. It's a simple song, which of course means it has no proper normal subsongs. Thank you, group theorists out there. It's a song that you can start up if you're not sure how long the bus ride is. Infinity bottles of beer on the wall, infinity bottles of beer. Take one down, pass it around. Infinity bottles of beer on the wall. Infinity, yeah, just keep going. If you're not sure how long the bus ride is, you got it going. What else? We have in math, of course, there's probability and statistics. There's algebra. There's functional analysis. There's all kinds of geometry and all these different fields. And again, things that have been going on for thousands of years that people are still solving 100-year-old problems and they're still relevant. And Higher dimensional stuff is a big way of generalizing and abstracting. Sometimes when you look at a problem and you think it's hard and then you raise it to a higher dimension, it actually turns out you can understand. You can somehow, you have more space to manipulate your object. So I'm going to go ahead and do another impression for you. I'd like to do an impression of a cheerleader in 8 dimensions. See how well you guys have paid attention in your linear algebra class. Machine learning, by the way, you guys are probably all studying data science and machine learning, right? Isn't that like everybody in the university studies that all the time now? That's all just, anyway, linear algebra, numerical analysis, and probability. So. But this is going to be able to see how well you paid attention. Let me just do it. A cheerleader in 8 dimensions. Ready? Okay. We'll put you to the test. We're better than the rest. We're gonna be the best. My arms are still moving. They're just orthogonal to your 3, and you can't see them. Best. Thank you. My cheerleader in 8 dimensions. All right, let me look around the dozen people in the room who got stuck here. I'm gonna do another impression. Actually, I'm gonna do another, this is my impression. This one works well. It's a math joke, but it's also kind of a political joke. It's relevant, at least. It's a political reference. I'd like to do my impression of Robert Kennedy in geometry class. This is Robert Kennedy Sr. This is the Attorney General who was assassinated in 1968. He's not. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that you all know from the news is his son, right? So Robert Kennedy, the original Robert Kennedy, in geometry class. Some people look at this axis and they say, why? But I distinguish a specific point on the axis and I say, why not? All right, that one's a bit of a stretch. I appreciate you guys. All right, well, we're kind of wrapping up here. I have like 10 to the 6th more jokes, so I'm not going to do them all. I do actually have a really great joke about Fermat's last theorem, but unfortunately there's just not enough room in the margins of this act for me to get the punchline out. But my name is Lew Lefton, and I really appreciate you coming out and sharing this time with me. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you, Lew. And we'll open it up for questions. If anybody has questions for our resident comedian.
Thanks. How do you get students to respond to your jokes? They just sit there usually.
It's a great question. I actually have a paper I published called Humor and STEM Education. The thing about, I'm going to take your question seriously for a minute if I assume, because I didn't hear a punchline, but there might have been one. But the notion of cognitive load, right, is something that it's a place where your brain gets sort of overwhelmed and you can't. And often if you just tell jokes in a classroom that are not necessarily connected to the material, you actually increase cognitive load there by decreasing processing power that you're trying to get the students to focus on a concept, an idea, whatever it is you're trying to teach. And so if you just throw in a joke at random, it's actually not helping, it's hurting, is what some of our data showed. But if the joke is about the material you're talking about, if it's a math joke and you're talking about some result and you want to do a Fermat's last theorem joke and you're talking about Fermat's last theorem, it actually can help the students create some mental scaffolding around which, because one of the things that humor as a phenomena is poorly studied, actually very poorly studied. There is one journal that I'm aware of called the International Journal of Humor, and it's published in Germany. So they don't have a big sense of humor there. Just saying, they're not known for their crazy. But in any case, it's a phenomena which is observable across all cultures and across all people, and people experience humor. It's a very unique thing. It's actually, some people have proposed it as actually the new Turing test, because right now, having a machine, so to your question about how do you get students to respond, is humor, if it's relevant to the class, so it doesn't feel like, oh, this is just And by the way, the professor wore a funny hat. That might get their attention, but it's not necessarily going to help them focus. But if you can get a joke in that actually gets a genuine laugh, that actually triggers that humor response to it in a person, it releases dopamine, it increases blood flow because of their breathing and oxygenation. Humor actually does allow you to change people's minds. This is why advertising, most Super Bowl ads, people who spend millions of dollars trying to influence and persuade you, use humor. Humor is a very powerful human connector. We don't fully understand it. We can't even define it in some ways. It's a complicated thing. But as far as how, I'm not sure that I do. I mean, you try. But just like how do you get your students to be interested in something? I mean, there is the philosophy that you don't have to be informative as long as you're interesting. Because if you're interesting, at least you have attention. And then if you don't have attention, you can't, even no matter how informative you are, right? We've all had to read a paper or try to learn some material that just didn't catch our interest. You just can't. It's blocked. So if you can maintain attention with a little bit of humor, not overwhelming. Obviously, stand-up comedy, you have to rule out the three big pillars of religion, sex, and politics. So, but you can still try to work on getting jokes inside your material that are relevant. You can write jokes about anything. I actually teach a Science for Georgia class that is for teaching STEM and STEM-adjacent professionals how to write stand-up. And we do a stand-up show at the zoo every spring for the Atlanta Science Festival. So anybody that wants to do that, check out Science for Georgia Jazz Hands. And we teach you how to write comedy. I mean, it is actually a technique you can learn. Other questions?
So I'm also a kind of stand-up comedian. I did a lot of stand-up.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage.
For like science in general, or like biology. I was just wondering like what get you into like, what get you started doing like stand-up comedy, and like what do you think are some ways that you can like promote STEM education through these things?
Well, as I mentioned in the answer to the previous question, I think there is a connection between humor and learning, and in some ways, so not just STEM education, but as far as what got me into it, I mean, I was in graduate school and I just started going to open mics. This was in the 80s, so there were a lot of comedy clubs. Nowadays, most stand-up, most comedy happens online. Happens on TikTok and Twitter and places where people, and it's much harder. It's much harder to get your material, because back in the 80s you would get a booking, you would go to a club, you would stay in a crappy hotel, you would drive to the next city in the Midwest and you'd do it again, and it would be a different audience. Now if you do a joke online, that joke is dead, right? You can't do it if you get called up on Fallon or Kimmel or something, because everybody's already seen it, they want to see something new. So you have to get better at writing. But the main thing, it's like any other performing art, stage time. You just have to get out and get on stage. There's an Atlanta stand-up comedy Facebook page that you can get onto that shows you where all the open mics are, and just get up on stage every opportunity and have fun. If you're not having fun, if it's too much anxiety, then find a different outlet. Just become a writer or something else. But yeah, performing is just like anything else. It takes practice.
I actually have a similar question. So I've been teaching, this is my 18th year of teaching, and my students now are of a different generation than when I started teaching. So it used to be, I'm a millennial and I used to teach millennials. How do you find the process of adapting, like realizing that some things aren't, like cultural references aren't the same?
That's right.
How do you
I just did a
stay
Bobby
fresh?
Kennedy joke, by the way. That's like 1968. Yeah, it's tough. I do think that one of the things I used to teach a project-based learning class at Georgia Tech that was on, we called it the Humor Genome Project, that was an attempt to sort of break down humor and try to understand it. I mean, part of it was just students learn some basic AI stuff and machine learning, but getting computers to write jokes is basically it's an unsolved problem. It's not clear that it's even doable. So that's why it's getting proposed as a potential new Turing test. But in particular, senses of humor change with age, they change with culture, they change with individual experience, so they are almost as unique as your fingerprint. So to get your younger students, the students who, one thing we found in that class, with a little bit of the data that we collected, we didn't actually have an IRB, so I couldn't publish it, but did some surveys. And what we did was the Gen Z folks, the younger students, they liked sillier humor. They liked like just sort of crazy, they didn't want like cerebral, clever wordplay. You know, sometimes puns are silly, but a lot of times it was just like even like when the early TikTok videos, the lower the production quality, the better, the funnier they were, right? They weren't going for something that was clear and clean. They wanted just something that was raw and authentic.
One more question.
Hi, do you know anything about Googology or Graham's number?
Googology or Rand's number? Are those Ramsey's numbers?
Graham.
Graham's number. I don't know what's the do you know the definition of Graham's number?
Yeah. Googology is the study of big numbers,
Okay.
and Graham's number is one of the most famous examples. And I was going to tell a joke about it, but it's probably too big to comprehend.
Drop that mic. Let's go. I think that's a perfect place to end. But it sounds like it's part of Ramsey theory, which is the sort of the study of subsets and sets of sets and things like that. So it's a way to get super exponential growth in combinatorics, where you still have finite sets, but they are like much larger than any super exponential you could write down. It's good
Much
stuff.
too big for me to understand.
Too big to understand.
So I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Let's thank Lew Lefton for joining us.
So